let's begin. This is for the week of 11/28, and for this week, actually, it's real quick overview, especially for this week's articles unlike this. The first article was the one about Ling Wu, who was the character in the show Ally McBeal, and what the author argues is that for her character to be really understood, you need to have a historical context. The author then goes into beautifully summarizing the very complex history of Chinese Americans, and the Chinese in this country, and how the Chinese presence has been very much a part of the U.S. landscape, especially the West, since the 1830s, and that the Chinese were brought here, Chinese men and women, under forced conditions, and eventually as very, very, very abusively cheap labor, and that they were a part of what made this country great, yet they have been erased. Their history is completely overlooked, even in the state of California, where, by the way, the Chinese couldn't own land until well into the 20th century. They were the first group to be specifically targeted. In 1882, the Chinese were the first group to be targeted specifically by U.S. officials, by the U.S. Congress, and that was when the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed, and they were not given access to, to this country. They were not allowed into this country. They were not allowed citizenship, although this is also true for other Asians as well. They were also feminized, they were vilified, they were brutally mistreated, there were lynchings. There was also the cutting off of the queue, the braid, that was seen as a major threat for some reason against civilization. But what's also really important, because this article's focus on Ling Wu, is the history of women. The Chinese men, as we saw in the clip from Eat a Bowl of Tea, were not allowed to bring their families. Women were not allowed to come in, and the women who were brought in, and a lot of them were young girls, were brought in forcibly as prostitutes. And so that sort of image is what has sort of snowballed into the image today of the Asian woman as very exotic, very sexualized. Granted, as I have discussed in class, that's very similar to the way all other women are represented, as being very sexualized. The Asian male is very feminized, or considered very violent. Again, contradictions and polar oppositions throughout all of this. The author makes a point to discuss how audience reception. There were young Asian women, Asian American women, who were seeing the Ling Wu character as very liberated, as breaking outside the box of the typical, Asian woman. She wasn't quiet, she wasn't submissive, but Daryl Hamamoto argues, and other scholars, that when you look at the broader history, that this is just one more way of sexualizing the Asian woman, and by not talking about the Asian male, continuing this idea of emasculation simply by erasing the Asian male. Oy vey. The article, Where Are You From?, explores how Asian Americans and Asians in this country have been depicted and have been imagined as not just foreigners in this country who want to stay and work and so on, but as alien, as something outside, as something not natural. Think of the discussion in the article about citizenship. What is it called when you want to become a citizen? You want to become naturalized. You want to become a part of the natural order. So if you are not, and by the way, this applies also to all other groups, you are seen as alien, not foreign, alien. Look and think about how this article discusses the difference between the two. The article touches on the importance of history, and it's very, very significant that Chinese Americans specifically were very, very, very proactive in turning to the courts for protection, and a lot of times won, by the way. They may have won in the courts, by the way, quite a few decisions, but in the long run, those decisions, as often happens, weren't exactly properly carried out, because it's in the local, and how, again, what this article talks about, what these articles talk about, how the mainstream image of Asian Americans, specifically Chinese Americans, affects the local, affects the treatment of these people. We saw it in the clip from Ethan Mao. This article discusses the Ozawa case in 1922 by the Asian man who says specifically, you know what? I'm paler than most white people. I deserve to have citizenship, because you couldn't have citizenship if you weren't white. And you know how the courts argued against that and did not grant him his citizenship, did not naturalize him. The article Yellowface continues with this discussion of Asian Americans, and this one again highlights the idea of, because you're foreign, by the way, it says where are you from, because you're supposedly very foreign looking, because you're Asian, whatever that is, because there's so many categories, then you are considered, it's impossible for you to be American. Even when you're asked, as the other article says, where are you from, the question isn't, you know, where were you born in the U.S., but where are you from in Asia? You're quite obviously alien. Where are you from? The article Yellowface discusses the different stereotypes for Asians, and again goes into the exploration of Asian American history and how Asian Americans have been made foreign. This article makes takes a really good look at the idea of we are a family. What I said of we as Americans are a family, but what is at stake when you're allowing aliens to come in and pollute this family? Is it just the blood, or is there more? Is it about resources? Is it about property? Is it about just family? Is it just about difference in the long run, as Zora Neale Hurston says in one of the first articles you read? What's also really great about this article is that it takes you on a long historical journey and shows you how these 6 images of the Asian threat to America have changed throughout time, more or less.